Okay, in this video, we're going to go ahead and get started with creating our individual divisions for our web page. Okay, so in the last video, basically I went through creating a new HTML document, which gave us our beginning tags. We created some simple CSS to kind of zero out our layout and get us to a default. And now we're going to begin to get started on creating our divisions. So a couple videos ago, I asked you to go and look at your Photoshop document and sort of get an idea of how you would divide up the areas of the page you're working on. And in this case, I settled on 5 divisions. One for my header, one for my banner, one for this kind of logo design over here, one for my navigation, and one for my footer. Okay, so going back over here, looking at the finished of this is the finish. When we finish what we're going to do here in the next few minutes, you're going to end up with something that looks like this, okay, with those 5 divisions, okay. So let's go ahead and jump back here, and let's get started. Now, one thing I want to talk about in the Photoshop document here, I'm going to turn on a layer. And I've created a new layer here in my Photoshop document that wasn't there before. Okay, and I have this layer in here for a reason, because I want to talk about something that's pretty important when it comes to creating your web pages. And if you can see here, I'm going to go ahead and turn off the guides. You can kind of see here and just click off this. Okay. All right, you can kind of see here that I have a background layer here, which is this white. You can see this here. And then I have this gray region that I'm calling a wrapper. Okay. And we're going to create a wrapper in our Dreamweaver document. And let me explain what a wrapper is. You might also hear some people call it a container. And basically what it does is it's going to hold all of these little pieces that make up this web page. Because when you have to work with individual pieces and trying to move them around and get them into the proper layout, sometimes it can be a struggle. And if you create a container or a wrapper around those elements, sometimes they're much more easy to control by placing them inside of a container or a wrapper. So I wanted to know what size I should actually make my wrapper. So that's why I created this gray region, so that I can get an idea in terms of pixels what size my wrapper should be. So basically, turning on my guides here, I drew out a gray box indicating that this would be the size of my container once I get into Dreamweaver. Okay, and then I selected, holding down the command key, and I selected that region, and I brought up my info box. And over here in my info box, it tells me the width and the height of the area that I have selected at this particular time. So that tells me that the wrapper I create in Dreamweaver should be 944 by 690. Okay, so let's go over here to Dreamweaver, and you may want to write that down. So it's 944 by 690, I think is what I said. Let's see. Yes, 944 by 690. Okay. All right, so over here, we're going to get started. Now, I mentioned to you in the instructions in eCampus that you should use the APDiv tool to create all of your divisions. It's just a lot easier and more intuitive for someone who's just getting started. I don't use the APDiv tool anymore because I know enough about hand coding that I can just type in the divisions without using it. And eventually you will wean yourself off of the APDiv tool. But for right now, just beginning, it's the easiest way to get started. So we're going to go up and we're going to grab that, and it's under Insert, Layout Objects, APDiv. Okay? And as soon as you select that, it creates a div here. I'm going to kind of unz that Command Z that. Actually, there's two ways you can do that. You can come up here and go Layout, APDiv, or you can come over here under Insert and actually grab the tool under Layout. You can go to Layout, and you can grab this APDiv right here. Grab this tool, okay? And it gives you, you can kind of see the crosshair here. It gives you like a tool. So you can draw out the region that you want to begin with. So what I'm drawing here is going to be my wrapper. So I go ahead and I just draw out a random size for my APDiv, okay? And based on that dimension I just wrote down from Photoshop, I'm going to assign some information to this div. Now once I just drew this, I want to call attention to two areas. Notice I just drew this blue area. Over here in my code mode, I end up having an addition to my CSS, and I've got an APDiv1 selector, and I've got some information already assigned to that div. Okay. Now if I want to modify that information, what I have to do is come over here to my CSS styles and open up my CSS styles, and notice that APDiv is also located here. Okay, so one thing I forgot to tell you before we go any further is, in order to work efficiently in Dreamweaver, you really only need 3 palettes over here, and those 3 are CSS styles, the Files tab, which I've already been working with, and the Insert button. Those 3 are your most popular, and I would suggest getting rid of any of the other palettes, and they show you how to get rid of the palettes in those lynda.com tutorials, so we're not going to go through that here. Okay, so I basically just followed that. But under the CSS here, notice that I have a style set up, which is already here. Here's my style tag, and my style tag is showing up over here, and under that style tag I have my body, which was my font over here, changing my default font, and then I also have my body for defaulting to the zero out the layout. Okay. Now my APDiv, if you notice here, I have some dimensions associated with that. And what we're going to do to edit that, because I wrote down the size that that APDiv should be, is come down here and click on this pencil, and it brings up the division box. And over to the left here, you want to click on the box option, and you want to change this dimension to be what I just wrote down here, which was 944 by 690. Okay, that's the dimension that we wrote down from Photoshop that we determined we want our wrapper to be. So when I hit apply, my wrapper back here, if I say OK, notice over here in my CSS code, my width and height has changed to 944 by 690. You could easily come and type it in over here in the code mode as well, but I'm trying to get everybody in the habit of using Dreamweaver to edit their code for right now. Eventually you'll change, but for right now it's fine to leave it that way. Okay, so we've got our wrapper here, and we're going to begin to create our divisions. Looking at the example here, this would be this outer gray area right here. Okay. Now, you're not going to have anything really on your page. It's just going to be a blank box at this point. You're not really going to have anything show up in the design mode. Okay. All right, so let's continue then, and let's go ahead and make another division. So let's go back over here and grab that division tool, and we're going to make the division for our header. And I'm just going to click and kind of drag this to about right there. And if you grab this little square at the top, it allows you to move the div down. So I kind of have it somewhere about here. And right now we're just going to rough it in. We're going to snap this into place later. But for right now, we're just going to go ahead and rough in those divs. All right, so let's continue. Let's go back to the APDiv tool. And going back and looking at my Photoshop document, so far I have already drawn out my header here. I want to draw out these 2 divs, one for the banner and one for this logo. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to draw out, starting here, an area to define my banner, and then I'm going to go back and get the APDiv tool, and I'm going to draw out an area to define my logo. So already we've got 1, 2, 3, we've got 4 divisions drawn out here already. One of them being our wrapper. Okay, so I've got 2 more actually that I need to draw here. Going back to get my tool, and I'm going to go ahead and draw out a box for my navigation. And I'm going to go ahead and get my div tool again and draw out a region just to fit in my footer here. Okay. All right, so looking back at my example here, you kind of see I have these divisions set up. We are going to rename them, and that's what we're going to do next. You can kind of see how those divisions don't read APDiv 1, 2, and 3. They now actually physically read names here. So that's what we're going to do next. All right, so let's go back to our document that we're working on. And we're first going to click on this division out here, which is our wrapper, which is going to contain all of our elements. And down here in our properties, notice it says APDiv 1. We're going to go ahead and select that name, and we're going to call that wrapper. Whoops. Okay. All right, notice over here in the code mode, it has changed that APDiv 1 to wrapper. And it has also changed your HTML down here to wrapper. Okay, so we're just going to go ahead and name all these divs. So I'm going to select this second one and come down here, and I'm going to change this to say header. Hit enter, and it indeed changes it up here in my code. Okay. This one over here, I'm going to call this one the banner. And hit enter. This one over here, I'm going to call this G-Slice. You can also call this one logo, but I just called mine G-Slice just because I like that word. It's kind of cool. All right. I select this division, and this one's going to be my nav, N-A-V. Okay. And over here, I'm going to select this one, and I'm going to go ahead and label this footer. Okay. So notice that over here in your code mode, it has gone ahead and changed all of these regions to be named properly. It's also changed all of your HTML down here. In addition, if you look in your CSS, you now already have some CSS getting started here. You have your header, your banner, your G-Slice, your nav, and your footer. And you also have your defaults that you set up earlier. Okay, so basically in a few steps here, we were able to lay down some basic structure for starting our CSS and our HTML. So I will continue with this in the next video, where I will be discussing further enhancing this structure and starting to build content out of it. Okay, so I'm going to stop this.